Standard deviation.
Working neuron. And this is a good way to start the podcast. I have one working neuron. How are you, Simo? How are
That's
you
more
doing?
than you need regularly.
Exactly. Statistically, for me, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm good. It's kind of looking like summer is in Finland finally. How's things in Romania? Have you got sun?
It's pretty dark actually outside.
Okay.
I have my lights on, as you can see. It's pretty Finlandy in Romania.
Yeah.
It was very hot back in April and March. It was like 27 degrees, and
Yeah.
now it's like pretty miserable. But it is summer is coming. I need a vacation. I
Yeah.
don't know. Are you gonna go to the lake house again this
We
summer?
are as much as possible. So yesterday was actually like it was like 25 degrees. It's 23 now, but it's really really warm here in Finland, at least in Finnish standards. And yeah, my wife took the kids. I was at work, but my wife took the kids to there's a lake really close by. Actually, we're moving even closer to so we're moving house right now. We're going to move even closer to the lake, but so they went swimming. They were crazy. It's like 7 degrees. The water is, and they were. My son is just crazy. Like he just jumps in and starts going around, and so I was really proud of that. But yeah, I'm a bit yeah, I'm a bit pissed that I didn't get to do that as well
Do that,
because now
yeah.
I owe them one dip in the water. Uh, because usually I'm the first one to go, and then they come later. But yeah,
I cannot even imagine being that warm in Finland. Because oh
it
my,
is like no. So here's the thing about Finland. We're just two extremes, right? And then just a lot of darkness in between. Like we have super cold winters, so we can go to minus 20, 25, minus 30 even, and these are Celsius for all the American listeners.
yeah, exactly.
And then we can go easily, 25, 30, even 35 in the summers. So it is like and that's it's fun in a way, but it places enormous stress on house construction because houses need to be insulated, but they also need
Yeah,
to allow, because summer brings moisture. And so we have all these. Finland has all these problems with like moisture in the buildings and black mold. It's
yeah.
not it's not really an epidemic problem, but it's just something that people are very wary about. And if you have a house, you know, if you try to sell a house like we're trying to sell our house now, which is almost 50 years old already, you have to do all these inspections and you have to have like a super clear lawyer written pamphlet that says all these things because when you sell the house, you're still on the hook for 5 years for hidden problems in the house. So if there's like a let's say there's a rotten, I have no idea what these words are in English, but there's a rotten, one of those structures that hold the house, foundational structures. If
Yeah,
it's rotten to the core, because moisture has come in, you might have to pay for the whole thing, even though you sold the house like 4 years ago.
I would
So
wish something like that would be in Romania because people just sell you some random shit and
no,
then
exactly, and I would like that. Like that would be great if we had that. Of course, when we buy a house, I'm really happy that we have that kind of safety net. But it is like it is a huge amount of stress because our house is precisely of the age when these problems still were. So we now have to do all these crazy good inspections, so that when we sell the house, we can prove that we've gone through all the hoops, we've checked everything, and anything that remains is like the burden of the buyer. So we need like a lawyer to go through that. You can't just sell a house and hope for the best. You really need this stuff in place. So yeah, Finland is like that. We have cold winters and hot summers, and it's like just in terms of wardrobe, it's also weird because we have all these different layers of clothing for different seasons. So we need extra storage space in the house. We can't just have like thin clothes
yeah.
because it's always hot, or we can't just have like for like woolly clothes because it's always winter. So
I remember seeing this video, Get Ready With Me, and there was this Finnish girl going outside with a dog, and she put like so many layers.
yeah,
She had like six, 7 layers, and I was telling to my husband, if I would put all that up, I would be like Humpty Dumpty walking
yeah.
through the
And
street.
hey, think about daycare. When there are 20 kids and they need to go outside, and
Oh
every single
God.
one of them needs to get dressed like the regular clothes, then the wool layer, then the hats and the scarves and the mittens and three pairs of mittens. One the shell inside and then two more on top. It's like a full day job. Today was actually the first day when I took my daughter to daycare. It was the first day this year where I drop her off at daycare. I don't have to take anything off. I don't have to put anything on. Like she can go out with the same clothes as she's inside. And of course, I have to put sunscreen because now it's too hot, and the Finnish complexion doesn't work with that. We burn so easily. So
Oh my god. That
yeah,
that I never thought it was that hot, but I've always chosen like the best months to go to Finland, like April, March,
yeah.
February,
That's
the
terrible.
worst.
That is just terrible. Like I can imagine it's similar. Like I don't know what is it about Finland. Is it because we're so close to Russia and there's a lot of cold wind coming from Siberia, like
Yeah.
figuratively and literally speaking? But it seems like we're the buffer zone for the rest of the North Europe. Like if the cold wind comes, we stop it and we keep it to ourselves. And that's why Sweden is always so ridiculously warm, and Denmark is warm, and Estonia is even warm. And yeah, I don't know what it is.
I'm
Damn
excited
Russians.
about Sweden because I'm gonna go there in when am I going in Sweden? In October. I'm
For Measure
speaking
Camp?
at Conversion Jam.
Oh
No,
yeah, okay. Yeah, John Ekman's conference. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good one.
I met him in Greece. He's such a nice person and
Yeah,
like
he is.
interesting. And we had like the worst hours in that to talk in our in the event because we talked like I was he was the last and I was before him, and it was so hard because people
That's
were
garbage time.
I know we got we got the worst timings, and like we're very different. And I was like all jokes, but my jokes didn't land that well. And then he came with this great AI talk, and we were talking. We left together in the morning towards the airport, and we were like, "Damn, we had the worst time," because like people were like this. Right?
Yeah,
What else can you possibly tell me at 6 p.m. in the afternoon? Like
yeah.
I've been here all day. So, but for some reason, he liked my talk. Still don't know why. And he said, "You know what? We already have the list for conversion jam, but you should totally come." I was like, me? I was trying to look cool, because like I didn't want him to think I was excited, but I was fucking excited. I was like, oh my god, Johnny, if you hear this, it's too late. You already put me on the calendar.
Do they still do? I think they used to do it so that they have it both in Norway and Stockholm, like one after the other. Do they still do that?
I have no idea.
So you're only going to Stockholm.
Yeah, just Stockholm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm excited because I saw that in previous editions they actually made jam. And if, I would hope it would be some Cloudberry jam because I love Cloudberry.
Yeah, it's a fun event.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
nice and just
Did he have his AB suit on?
yeah. His
Yeah.
shirt that
Yeah, so John has this. At least he had. I think he has a whole suit as well, where half is one color and the other half like vertically split in two colors, which is kind of a fun. I think it was green and red actually, a horrendous combination, but I think for A/B tests, kind of a
it
typical
shows
choice.
that
So
it has to be a meaningful change. It's not just a button color test.
exactly, you have to have the heuristics of the tailoring in place.
Now we
Here
know.
I am using a word that I learned from else arts in a previous episode.
Cool. Well, what are you up to though? Because like for people that wonder why is this more all over the place than usual, we haven't actually talked in a long time.
Yeah,
Normally, it's good. Like it's better like this though.
yeah.
I think.
So I think like life is in the way. We're like I said, we're moving house. My son is starting school, so
Oh
we're kind of
yeah,
figuring that out. He got accepted into a school which is close to our current home, but it's not close to our new home. So now we're trying to fight the city to kind of get him into a school that's more nearby. And I'm just waiting for summer. It's just so many things going on. At Simmer, we are almost done with our new course. So we've been working on this course called Chrome Dev Tools for Digital Marketers, which is like the more and more I did it, the more I thought I should have maybe reframed it as how to do analytics debugging, like how to do digital marketing debugging.
that's so
Because
cool.
while I use dev tools exclusively in the course, it's more about you know you have a marketing tag or something that isn't working as you want it to. So where do you start from? How do you start debugging it? But it's been a really fun course. Because I'm a huge DevTools fan. I think it's just one of the best things that anybody in digital marketing or technical marketing at least should just do all the
I
time because it
haven't
gives you
seen
all the
any
tools that you
course.
need.
I haven't
But
seen. I mean, there are some videos on DevTools, but I haven't seen any good like digital marketing course
Well,
for
there's a bunch. But they usually go through all the same stuff. So Elements panel, cookies,
yeah,
JavaScript console, and I
network.
know like David Vallejo has done some excellent presentations on dev tools at conferences and measures. Julia's Measure School has some dev tools. So there are a bunch. They're typically articles like this is how you use
Articles,
dev
yeah.
tools. So the thing about dev tools, which made me cringe a bit when I did this course, was that Chrome actually has an excellent set of tutorials for dev tools. Like I can never do as good job as them. So early on, I decided this isn't going to be like this is how all parts of DevTools work, because that would make no sense. So I did the same thing I did with the JavaScript course at Simmer, where instead of doing like an end-to-end walkthrough, this is all you need to know. We focus solely on the use cases that digital marketers might find useful. So just to keep it laser focused. It'll also keeps the course size manageable. So it's a shorter course again, and will be reflected in the price as well. But it's also nice because it's now we're shaping up this kind of a developers bundle for digital marketers, where we have JavaScript, we have CSS selectors, and now we have dev tools. So we can kind of bundle them together nicely and offer it as
The whole
one
pack,
one
yeah.
yeah.
Like that.
So, but it's been a fun course to do, even though um, I'm at the point of course creation where I'm looking forward to working on something completely different as soon as possible, because it is exhausting um, to just do this stuff and to be creative all the time. It's exhausting, but um,
Thank you for saying that.
no,
Like,
no, it
it's,
is
it's
like people
fucking
underestimate the stuff,
exhausting.
underestimate how creativity is a it's just a soul sucking thing.
Thank you for
Um,
saying that. Like, I had this conversation with Jim Gordon like a few months ago,
mm,
and I told him, "Bro, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of trying to be creative. I'm tired of being creative, and I'm tired of being relevant. People don't understand how hard it is to be creative and relevant and useful
mm.
at the same time. It's fucking tiring. Thank you for saying this. Like, I feel validated emotionally. But
No, but it is like just
how much?
coming up with ideas and then rethinking those ideas. Like, is this what the people expect? And like, if this were my blog, I wouldn't care at all. Like, I don't feel the need to. I don't owe anybody any content. I can create whatever I like, and the quality can be whatever I like. But when I'm creating something that costs money, then you have an obligation to actually deliver. At least if you want to keep the refund rates down, which we obviously do. So we have an obligation to deliver, and I want this to be good quality. But it is a difficult topic, again, because there are a million ways that a marketing tag can fail, and there are only a handful of ways that you can actually debug it in a generic way that doesn't require you to go into the weeds of a specific tag. But yeah, it's been fun to work on that course.
My favorite DevTools resource, you will laugh, it's actually the Mozilla FAQ, the Mozilla Developer FAQ. But it's very good if you're.
It is. Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
my
The
favorite.
MDN, Mozilla
Yeah,
Development
yeah,
Network.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
old ass wiki one, but it's so good. And but it's not case specific. That's the thing. So
Yeah,
I think that's the value that you guys are working on, to actually show the use case, because it's very hard to contextualize things that you read in general
yeah,
if you don't know what you're reading, especially if it's a new topic to you. It's easier to get in through a case study or a use case or like an actual story, user story, than to just here's all the information, figure it out. Yeah,
yeah,
so
for
I'm
sure.
excited. I'm excited about that. It's gonna be awesome. And when do you? I don't know why I always ask these questions, because like I never publish these episodes on time. I'm terrible, but
Yeah, and
probably
I've never got an answer for you, so I don't know.
yeah, coming soon.
Yeah, it's coming when it's coming. Like, maybe if everything goes really smoothly, the course will be ready by the end of May. So probably after this episode is out, but
Yeah,
most
that's
likely like
crazy.
A
Yeah.
June release. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't really know, and I don't really care. It will come out when it comes out. Like, it's
If you're
somebody just we wrote a newsletter again a while ago and got some good feedback, but somebody wrote back and anonymously, which is whatever. And you know how I feel about feedback, but they wrote like they wrote like the newsletter content is excellent, but you're like the worst marketer in the world. And I was like, I know, but could you please give me specifics because I need to know what did I fail at this time, because I know that I do such a like crap job at advertising our courses. But it happens organically. Like I feel very self-conscious about pitching anything that I've created, so I'd rather just throw it to the wolves and see if they throw it back.
And it speaks for itself because you see people adopting it. But I think Mari, because I don't think that's you, I think that's Mari. I think Mari is doing a great job with the social media
Or
content.
she's doing it like yeah, she was born to do
She's,
that stuff. Like I'm
she's
just
killing it.
yeah,
Like the content, the little
yeah,
Q&A sessions, the like it's great. And I think that helps a lot for people to get an idea of
yeah,
what they can learn if they come and and take a course. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm excited. And DevTools, yeah, this is one I need to probably review myself
yeah,
again. It's okay. It's
yeah,
okay to be honest. It's okay to know your limits.
yeah. Just don't send me any feedback, and we're good.
I won't. I promise. I won't. I will keep it for myself. Cool, cool, cool. But so also like we have today. I'm glad we're not talking about GA for today. This is so exciting. I'm so happy. Yes,
Finally,
finally. I might release this in advance just to like
yeah,
mess with people. But today we're going to talk about something really interesting. I think, Simo, we're going to talk about public speaking, about how to
yeah,
get into public speaking. Can share some stories because you are, like already experienced in the public speaking space. I'm trying to get there as well, maybe. And then our guest today is actually one of the best people that are doing public speaking, and he has also trainings and is coaching
yeah.
people to teach them how to story tell, how to present a story. So we're going to talk about that with him. But I just want to say thank you, Simo, for recommending me to a certain conference that I wanted to go because I've been applying. I applied so hard, like that
Mm,
not LinkedIn, Linkin Park song.
I
I tried
applied so
so
hard.
hard. Yeah, that was me. I applied so hard. So I don't want to say which is which, but
Yeah,
Simo helped me, recommended me to, and as you should, if you have a female colleague or friend, and you cannot do something or you think it's an opportunity, go and recommend your female. You
yeah.
should recommend your colleagues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, so here's the thing about recommending is that it's also super helpful for the organizer because they probably have quite a short list and they don't have the resources to look for speakers. So when an established speaker who can't make it themselves recommends somebody else, it's of course really really helpful for them. So
Yeah.
yeah, it as if I ever have an opportunity to refuse a talk, which I'm very happy to do every now and then, of course it's great too. And you can start, like, this is a tip for people. You can start building a list of names to recommend and just pass that to the organizer because they're going to be really really grateful for that, to have that list and resource. And of course, like, if you can make the list diverse, all the better. It's because there are diversity problems in our industry and all over it. So and it's not a good excuse to say that only the white bald men are know how to speak, because there are so many examples of super good authorities from all walks of life and
But
all ranges.
Simo,
So
how did you get
yeah,
started though? Like, who was the person that invited you first to speak to a conference? How was your first experience? Because nobody.
I think it was Zoli for Super Week actually. I think so. I think that was the yeah. I think Super Week 2014. Like, well, I mean, I had been doing academic conferences before because I had a career in academia, so it wasn't a new thing to present publicly. And we can actually talk about this with our guests, but academic stuff is quite different because you need to be peer reviewed, and it's not just about like, hey, I have this good blog text, let me present that in a conference, which is still it is today. Digital marketing conferences are very much like that.
Yes.
But yeah, this was literally no, actually, it wasn't Zoli. Sorry, no, it was. I think it actually was at Super Week, the first Super Week. I was an attendee, and I won the platinum punch card. That's how it worked. And so I won this competition for analytics solution. It was about tracking weather in Universal Analytics. And at that event was, I don't know if Jindrik himself was there, but there was one of the organizers of Marketing Festival in Brno, the Czech Republic. And after Super Week, he wrote me that, hey, I heard good things about you at Super Week, even though I did like a 5 minute presentation of
Yeah.
this punch card.
It was
So
good
would you
though.
like to present in this conference in front of like 2,000 people in one of the coolest cities in Czech Republic? I was, oh sure, let's do that. But that conference was then in November, and there were a couple of conferences before that where I also talked. But that was really what got the ball rolling. But
So how
yeah,
was it
it's
when you first did it on stage, when you proved it? Like were you nervous? Because I'm always nervous. Even if I did it like so many times, I'm still nervous.
Well, you know what? And I'm going to say this. This might have some hindsight stuff, but I don't think I've ever been really nervous doing a talk. There are some jitters, like when you're about to go on, less to do with am I going to do a good job, more about like will the tech work?
Yeah,
Will when I speak into the microphone, will anything come out? Will I trip myself? All this silly stuff that as soon as I have the opening slide and my clicker works and my microphone works, like all the nervousness goes away
no,
because at that point, and this is again something we have to talk with our guest about, because at that point it becomes less about presenting and more about just channeling your expertise, and that for anybody who's comfortable with their expertise, like who knows, like if you go on stage and you're like, I know this stuff, like
yeah,
I can wing it, I can improvise it. If anybody asks me a curveball question, I can field it, no problem. Then there's going to be no problem. But
yeah.
if you go on stage like let's just trying to cheat yourself into doing a talk on something you don't know much about, then it would be nervous. So I've always taken the kind of I've taken the safe path by choosing talks and topics that are, that I'm comfortable with doing, even if the organizer would like me to talk about something else. So for example, right now there's a lot of demand for GA4 talks. So a lot of organizers, when they ask me to talk, they're gonna, okay, I know you want to talk about this, but would you also like to slide in some GA4 wisdom? I'm not going to do that. Like I'm not comfortable talking about that. We got back to GA4. I'm not comfortable about talking about GA4, so I'm not going to do that. And then they have to accept it or not. But this is how I mitigate nervousness. I
I
make
like
sure
that
that I only,
framing because
yeah,
nobody knows what you have to say besides you.
yeah,
You're the only
exactly.
one that knows what's coming in your deck. You're the only ones that knows, the
Yeah,
idea. That actually, I'm gonna try that. That's a good framing because
yeah, but
I always look
yeah,
at people in the audience and like I try to just look at two people all the time.
yeah,
That
for sure.
so I see that they're engaging with me, but like then I see people, and I'm like, damn, like do I look okay? Do I have
No,
something
but
on
that's
my face?
hey, that's a good strategy as well. So that's tactics more than a strategy. But if you're nervous, you find a couple of like anchors in the audience, like around the room, so that you're not just staring on one place.
Yeah,
Somebody who smiles or nods their head, because then you know they're an ally. So whenever
exactly.
you feel like you're getting nervous, you go back to them and wait. Please nod. Please
Please.
nod. Then they nod, and you're like, phew, okay. Then we can go on. So it's like, yes, I do that. I do that subconsciously. I'm not necessarily looking for people, but I make a point to find faces around the audience that I focus on, and then I start doing this like head thing where it looks like you're organically looking around the room, but you're really just concentrating on a few faces.
Oh man.
So it's yeah, that
It's
works
gonna be an
well.
exciting talk. We have Michael Aagaard. I hope I said his name
Yeah,
right because I have a very good, successful career of messing up people's names in this
he's a
podcast.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person.
Excited
Can't
to
wait for
get
it.
him on, but before we go, it might be that when you're listening to this podcast, the new
Yes.
bundle of courses with the web browser with the dev tools might be available on teamseymour.com because Simo, this podcast is sponsored by Team Seymour and
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, yes, we do sponsor this podcast, and we are a lovely little mom and dad shop doing courses around technical marketing. So make sure you visit teamsimmer.com, check out our courses, and use the coupon code DEVIATE, that's DEVIATE, to get 10% off individual course purchases. That was the
and
smoothest
and it's gonna be
what
good
we've ever
because
done.
no, it was good actually.
Yeah,
This
very
was
smooth.
good. Why am I speaking through it?
I don't know why you're coming closer to the microphone like you have a conspiracy, but everybody hears you better when
I
you do
haven't
that.
slept. I haven't slept well. Like I'm a bit crazy right now.
Okay, that's good.
That's good. Well, let's get Michael on so he can calm us down. Hopefully.
Oh, cheers, applause. Michael is here. Hi, Michael. How are you? We finally have you on the show.
Yes,
Yay!
thank you. I'm good. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you
and
so much for inviting me.
for sure. And Michael is like, I'm sorry that, but I have to start with an anecdote because do you remember where we met for the first time?
I believe it was a conversion summit or conference in London
Yeah,
in like 2013 or 14, maybe.
it was 2014. Good memory. It was 2014 conversion conference, and it was one of those awkward. I'd never met you before, but they put us on the same talk.
Yes.
We both
Yeah.
had talks around forms, I think. So they obviously thought, well, they'll do well together, and we've never met before. it was so awkward. But
it was super awkward. I was so pissed, not because of
yeah,
anything to do with you. I was just like, it was just such a, when organizers should not do stuff like that without asking you. It's
yeah,
like, it's just fundamentally fucking with your setup, right? It's like, I
yeah,
prepared this talk and suddenly I'm sharing it with
yeah.
like another person. What the hell?
And it was amazing. Like I was there with my wife, and she was in the audience. And I talked to Michael before that. It was the first time we actually. I think we did a
Mhm.
call, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
the first time we met in real life. And I just remember that when we were then nearing to our talk, and I was doing my walkthrough and going through the slides, and then having coffee, and I was like, "Where's Michael?" And you were around the corner somewhere, and you were like so focused. I've never seen somebody so focused. You were mouthing stuff, and you were like, I thought that you're going quite insane. And then I thought, like, who does that before a talk? And then we do the talk, and I was first, I think. And I remember I wasn't that happy with my talk. It was just like GA for forms, whatever. Who cares? And then you come on, and then after you did your talk, then I realized, okay, so that's why he did it, because you were so
Yeah.
incredibly confident, and you had all the tempo and the steps in place. And I'm wondering, do you still do that? Like, do you still
Well,
do that
I've
pre-game routine?
something similar, but I've calmed down a bit because,
Yeah,
well, yeah, I've calmed down a bit now, because back then I've been doing it for longer now, right? So
yeah,
I've got a better routine and so on. But I also think back then I didn't do much rehearsing, which I do
yeah,
now. So I think I had a little bit more nervous energy as far as, will I even remember this stuff, kind of thing.
yeah,
And then also because I get super amped before. I mean, I still do. I think I was more nervous back then because it was still early days as far as speaking, but I still have a lot of excitement and nervous energy. Now it's not so much around, I hope I won't fail miserably. It's more like, I really want to rock this, and I really want people to enjoy it and like me.
yeah,
So, but back then my whole philosophy was just, I would just get totally into the zone, and then like my whole thing was just amping myself as much as possible, essentially, like as if I was going into an MMA fight or something, like throwing
yeah,
punches and just like,
yeah,
going into this delirious state almost. And then like seconds before I walk on stage, then it just changes, right? So your
yeah,
observation, I've had that before also with tech, the AV folks and stuff at bigger conferences. Like I've heard from them afterwards, they're like, we thought you were going to pass out, man. Like
yeah.
we thought you weren't going to
It
make
was
it.
super intense.
But then the
Like, it was
second
really,
you
really
walked on
intense.
stage, you were fine. I'm like, yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
kind of, and I've also
yeah,
had people be uh, like I couldn't remember I met them backstage and stuff, and
yeah,
things, because I was just, yeah. But
yeah,
now I do well, not the opposite. I still try to get amped and stuff, but I just do it in a much more controlled way.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also, I think back then part of my speaking style was a little bit more like crazy and stuff, and I didn't have as
That's how you
elaborate.
do it. That's how
Yeah,
you
but
do it.
I back then I didn't have as much of an elaborate story as I do now, and so what I realized was that people found it really entertaining, but they actually didn't get everything I was saying, because I would do a new talk and people would be like, "I've seen that before." It's like, no, it's a new talk. So I realized
Wow.
that I was too much of a maniac up there, right?
Right.
And
So they
so,
remember the energy.
yeah, but they didn't really get much from the talk. So that I in a way reinvented myself at one point
Yeah.
as a speaker, and I also realized that if I go at 80%, that's fine, right? Because if I so 100% is way too much for most people to follow along with, and I would kind of crank it to 120. So now I found out that if I go to like 80%, that's much better. And also
Hmm.
if I slow down and speak slower, which is
Which
unnatural
is
for
so
me,
difficult to do.
yes, then that's much better as far as the delivery and stuff, and so
Yeah.
on. So I think right now I try to find an equilibrium as far as harnessing. I think being nervous before going on stage, for most people, nervous energy, whether you're freaking out or whether you're just excited or whatever, I think part of that is, for me anyway, is just a fundamental part of speaking, and it just means that
Mm.
you really care about what you're about to do, right? It's a challenge you're about to
Yeah.
face, and fight or flight mode is a very reasonable reaction. And so I think a big part of it is accepting that you have those nerves. The worst thing you can do is fight against it, which I think a
Yeah.
lot of people do, or feel ashamed, or try to tell yourself you're not nervous when you are, because
Yeah.
then you're going totally against the natural flow of things, right? So it's much better to accept this and then learn to work with that energy and learn to manage it rather than fight it. That's my philosophy anyways.
So So we actually talked about this in our intro, and we
Mm-hmm.
were thinking about like what kind of tactics do you have it for when you're stepping on the stage? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are different stages of nervousness. Like you're
Oh
just
yeah.
before you go on stage, you worry about like the tech.
Yeah.
Will I remember how to open?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing, I don't think many people actually think about how do I open my talk and how
Yeah.
do I close it? What are the
Oh yeah.
first words I'm going to say? What are the last words I'm going to say?
Well,
Like,
that's actually what I practice most,
yeah.
is the intro. So I mean, for my talks nowadays, I always have like a very well planned intro, and I always, well, almost always, start with a story
Mm-hmm.
that is very well rehearsed. Not rehearsed in the way that I'm like mechanical about it, but I just a story that I know very very well. I know exactly how to deliver it. That's a great way to open, and I advise other people to do that because you immediately capture people's attention, and it's hard not to listen to a story, right? And so what I also try to do with the story is try to make it funny, because if you can get people to laugh within like the first 30 seconds of being on stage, it's such a powerful way to start. And for the stories I usually tell stories where like it's far enough away from the subject that people are listening to the story and they enjoy it, but they're also starting to wonder, where is he going with this? And then
Yeah.
I try to bring it to the point, and then from there, kind of, perspectivize, do the problem statement, lead into the rest of the talk. But so sorry, just a quick tangent about openings. The main thing I would avoid, which a lot of people do, is they go on stage and they say who they are, what they do, how long they've been doing it for, who they have done it for,
I
and
don't
what
do that anymore. I
and
used
what
to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then what they're going to talk about. But the thing is that the MC who introduced you just
Yeah.
said your
Just did that.
name, your title, what you do, who you've done it for, and what you're going to say. So it's kind of a waste of time because you're just repeating what was just said. And then also, if you then throw in the nice slide with all the logos of all the incredible
Mhm.
companies you've worked for, it can be a bit of a turnoff for the audience also, because like, yeah, sure, we get it, you're incredible.
Yeah.
I
But
do that at
anyways,
the end now.
what's that?
I do that at the end now. Like I have like
Yeah.
my slide with what I do really at the end. And I just start with a joke. I learned that from Avinash.
Yes.
Like I
Yeah.
come there and I was like, like I for instance I have a talk right now and my first line that I'm rehearsing is would you
Hmm.
lie for $100?
Nice. Awesome.
What the fuck? What's she talking about? And it's about search query analysis. So
Yeah.
like it's so out there.
Very good. No, but that's perfect.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that. But what Simo was saying something that basically I really liked, because if you frame to yourself that like you're the expert and you shouldn't be afraid because you know what you're talking about, that can calm nerves a lot, right?
It
I
can,
like
but
that.
a couple of things as far as being more calm when you go on stage is so the first thing goes back to having an intro well planned out.
Yeah,
Because like you said, Simo, the first minute you get on stage, for a lot of people, that's where you're kind of most shaky, you're kind of finding your footing, that's where
yeah,
most things can go wrong technically and so on, and that's where you have like peak cortisol, adrenaline, everything going. So in my experience, the better you know your intro, like the more you can handle things going wrong, or the more you can just mask the fact that you're freaking out and so on. The better you know that intro, the better you can deliver it, and also the better you know that intro, uh, the more mental space, the more cognitive energy you have, to stay on track, because you can do the intro really without thinking too much about it. So that's one thing I do a lot. Another thing that kind of facilitates is another little tactic I have, which is before I go on stage, I'm essentially just practicing my intro, like the first couple of sentences. So I'm walking around, and then that kind of keeps my mind occupied on something relevant, and it keeps my mind from going, worrying or whatever. Da, 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 da. So that can help a lot, I think. And then the other thing that helps me a lot, and I know I've taught other people helps them also, um, is thinking of the stress you're feeling. We have a tendency to think that it's mental. It's of course caused by something, like psychological, but it's a physiological reaction, and it's very difficult to do real time stress management through psychology. For example, telling yourself, don't be nervous, usually doesn't work very well. So you have to think about your physiology, and the best way to do that is through your breathing, right? So for example, people often say take a deep breath, right? But the inhale actually stimulates your sympathetic nervous system, so flight mode essentially. And vice versa, the exhale stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. Like if someone jumps out and scares you, you go, right? You're getting oxygen to your system, you're getting ready, right? And if you're relieved, you go, ah. You don't go the other way. If someone scares you, don't go, ah, right?
Well,
Or
some
if you're
people do.
relieved, you don't go, so
Yeah.
thinking about that is helpful. So it's and just focusing on deep breathing is a good way to just get out of your head and back into your body, and just kind of controlling some of those reactions. So one of the things I do is, and then a long exhale.
So you're Wim
Yeah.
Hof in it.
What's that?
That guy Wim Hof that does the
Well,
breathing
I
exercises.
actually do a lot of Wim Hof, but
Me
Wim
too.
Hof's is actually the opposite. He really emphasizes on the
But
inhale. I focus on the exhale and breath holding.
oh,
But
that's so
but
good
you,
already.
if you wear a heart rate monitor during that exercise, you'll be able to see your heart rate go down. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so those two things, and then or those three things, and then also a little thing. I think is just if you can show up before and maybe just look at the stage, maybe go up during the break and walk around on the stage. It's just a little cognitive thing where it's just one less surprise or one less new thing because you've your brain has been in that situation right before. So those would be my main piece of advice.
Yeah.
But let's take it a bit step back. If you never spoke at the conference before, you're already shitting yourself,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But how do you get there out there? Like, what are some good ways? Because like I applied so hard and failed. So like I was
Mm.
singing to Simo earlier, the Linkin Park. I applied so hard. Finally, this year, I'm beating those odds with a conference that I tried so many times to speak
Okay.
at, thanks to
Yep.
Simo. But it's the rejection you need to deal with because I dealt with a lot of rejection. Like, man, I invited myself to so many conferences, and like people were like, no, and now they're saying after they see me speak, they're like, oh,
Mm.
we should have had you. Yes, you
Yeah,
should
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah.
But I did suck in the beginning, like terribly. I'm better. I'm not great. I'm not you guys, but I can put on a decent, show. That's how I call it, a decent show. But for people that are trying to get there, to network with these event organizers, to put themselves out there, like what
Mhm.
are some ways they can do it and potentially have a success rate?
Well, I mean, there's definitely more competition now than when I started because there's
Yeah.
everybody has a conference, right? So there's that also means that there are more opportunities, of course. But I mean, I guess I would take a step back from that and say you can start with sharing stuff on LinkedIn, like just getting practice with that, and maybe getting to do some webinars here and there or local meetups and stuff that gives you some experience. It gives you some traction. It helps you develop, become a better speaker, overcome some of those early nerves, but also it helps with your network. And I think networking is a big part of landing those gigs. And
Yeah.
then another thing I would say is you could start small, maybe with smaller conferences, right? Before you maybe go for the bigger ones. Not that it should hold you back. It could be a tactic because one of the things is that organizers are always looking for new great speakers, and they communicate and they share their experience. So it's often based on speaker ratings, like who's in the top three or whatever, and who do we want to get back, because audiences enjoy them. So if you can get your foot in the door, that's great. But another thing
Yeah.
about, I think, the networking part, as far as landing some of the conferences, is make sure to go to the speaker dinner, for example, because then you talk to other speakers and that grows your network. So little
Yeah.
things like that. But then I also say, as far as pitching the conferences, there's some logistical stuff as far as knowing how do they want to be pitched to, right? Some of them have a formal process, some of them don't. So maybe just figure that out first. Make sure you understand what the conference is about, and kind of their style and content and stuff like that. So what you're delivering is relevant. And then also, I mean, it's a good thing to actually have a talk because that sounds silly, but uh, I think a lot of people contact me with like, "Hey, I'd love to speak at your conference. I can talk about blah," and then that's a little bit like, then the conference organizers have to do a lot of work on your part. So I would have a very clear idea about I actually have a talk ready, right, that you can pitch.
Yeah.
And then another thing you could do is, maybe have a short video or something. You're not going to send them like I don't think it's a good idea to send like an hour long talk on, whatever shitty AV equipment or something, but
Yeah.
do a short video or something so they can get an idea of what kind of a speaker you are, what your personality is, and what your speaker
Yeah.
personality is. I think that can go a long way.
Yeah, once you have a couple of talks in your belt, you can do like a, and if you get somebody to shoot them in the audience, you can do like a mixtape.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's, I think, what especially if it's a new talk or a new speaker, conference organizers might be wary. One thing we did talk about in the intro was also that you can, like, slip your name to other speakers who as an alternative. They can never
absolutely.
make it. Reference me, because nobody does that, and conference organizers are super happy when somebody like Michael or somebody else, they can't make it, but hey, take a look at this person. I'm sure that she can deliver an amazing talk in my stead, and
Thank you,
that could really be.
Simo. Yeah,
But it's just common sense for everybody.
Yeah,
because then you don't leave them hanging with they had planned a thing around you.
I agree. And then, but that's also where stuff like LinkedIn comes in. You're sharing content there, and people are starting to notice you. And then it's like, we need a person to talk about this particular niche of SEO or something like that. And they're like, well, actually, on LinkedIn, I saw this person. Or like you said, they might reach out to you and say, like, Simo, we've had you a million times talk about analytics. Who else is out there?
Yeah.
Right? And they assume you have, the folks. That happens to me, anyways. And then another thing. Which is going to sound like I'm trying to promote my own services. It absolutely doesn't have to be me, but one of the things that I do a lot of speaker coaching. I've coached 120 people now, I think, and I really enjoy it first and foremost because I've spent so much time doing this, and it's just fantastic helping other people, and it's very gratifying work because for a lot of people it's for good reason, is like one of their biggest fears. So it feels good helping other people get through it. But one of the things that can be helpful is working with like a speaker coach, essentially, to help you. Yeah. It can just really jump you several layers of trial and error. Because if you work with someone who's quite experienced, especially within your subject matter, and who's also an experienced speaker, they can just help you build a good presentation, a good storyline, help you polish it. You can do practice rounds for them. They can give you feedback and so on. So you're already, at the equivalent of having, spoken at 4 conferences or something, because they can really help you, take that extra leap. And another thing also is a big part of, I think, what most coaches, definitely what I do is, I'm not directly doing confidence stuff. Like, that's not the main thing, but it's like, it's there. One of my intents is to help build their confidence, at least to the level where they're like, I can do this. I got a good presentation here, and I'm gonna kick ass. So it can take a bit of the nerves off. But and essentially, I guess that comes back to being really prepared and just doing what you can to deliver a great presentation.
Yeah. And how much do you think? Well, Juliana mentioned this earlier, but so my philosophy to nerves has been always that I know my stuff. I know, I specifically choose topics and talks where I know my stuff. I don't take risks. Some people do take risks, and they try different talks and different. But I found that to be really mitigating, because I don't have to worry about curveballs. I don't have to worry about the Q&A. I don't have to worry about tangents, because I'll always know to come back because I know my stuff. Do you think it's possible to do a good talk and do a confident job around a topic you're not that familiar with? Have you seen that, or have you done that yourself?
Well, I would advise against it.
Yeah.
Because I think part of also the expectation from a speaker is that they're talking about something they actually know, especially at conferences, because people come there to learn. So I think you're no longer dealing with imposter syndrome. You are, in fact, an imposter. That sounds harsh, but that's the way I would put it. So, one of the main criteria I would say is, talk about something you know and something you have real experience with, because that comes across and it's going to make your talk much better. But simply talking about something you have a lot of experience with, that can alleviate a lot of it. But you still be very, 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 very nervous for many other reasons than you can be fully confident that you know your stuff, but you can be like worried about blacking out, or just will people even enjoy it, yada yada yada. There's so many things. Personally, I get pretty worked up about talks, especially if it's a new one. And I have a pretty good idea that, well, I know that my content is solid. I know that I'm going to do pretty well. I know that the audience generally is going to think it's fine, but I want to nail it. Like I've spent so much time putting this presentation together. I've planned, I've put all these examples together, these like jokes and this and that. So like I'm just like super concerned about just doing a like really perfect delivery. Essentially, that's always what I'm trying to do. And my own competition is like I'm trying to be the highest rated speaker, and part of it is just I want people like I feel like I'm very transparent and vulnerable and whatever and real on stage. So it's me. It's a slightly exaggerated version, and so a big part of me is I really want the audience to like me, right? And that's also one of the things I can be a little bit harsh about reading speaker feedback afterwards.
That's why
I
I was telling Simo, because I look in the audience and I see people's faces, and if I see somebody just as little as a grimace, I'm like, "Fuck, what did I do?" Or like, "Oh, I." So that's why I was telling Simo, I find
yeah
people that nod around with me, and man, I look at them, and as Simo said earlier, you look at them and you're waiting on them to nod, and then you get your confirmation, like, "Shit, I'm good. Let's go."
Yeah, it's that's a difficult one because I have also, I mean, there's some people you simply cannot judge based on their look, because then I've had that where I'm in the crowd, I'm like, oh fuck, this guy hates me. Like oh
Exactly.
my god.
It's usually Eastern Europe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or Danish, my own, home country. Danish audiences are the worst, but or the harshest, anyways. But
Yeah, because
but
everyone's
but but
like
then,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But then the person comes up to you afterwards and is like, "I loved it," and you're like, "Oh, what? Wow!" Or suddenly they laugh or they ask a lot of questions, like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm really okay." But I guess a trick there is to like figure out some of the people who are actually really engaged, and then maybe just look at them. What I've done, I've also, there's a couple of conferences where I've been the MC, like hosting the event, and I've coached the speakers before. So what I've done there is then I'm sitting in the front row, and then like really looking at them and like kind of exaggerated, laughing
Yeah.
at the jokes, and if they look at me, I'm going like
Like a
stuff like
fluffer.
that. Yeah, exactly. Because then I'm like really trying to help them. So one of the things is like maybe
Yeah.
focus on some of the people you can see who are really
Yeah.
engaged, or
You can plant your friends in the audience
yeah,
in
do
the
that,
strategic places.
or
Yeah.
I've also sometimes done this, like you said, the stare down with the person who
Yeah.
looks like they're not enjoying it, but that can backfire because sometimes it's like the staring competition and they win and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, it can be distracting. But the other thing though is that I I prefer doing live talks rather than online, because I
Hmm.
mean, for me, part of it is feeding off the energy of the audience and being able to look at them and kind of figure out, oh, I can crank this up a bit, or I can turn this
Yeah.
down, or you get a really good reaction to a joke, and then maybe you can riff on it and stuff like that, and you have that feedback. And then
Yeah.
and then the opposite. I've tried that a couple of times with talks that I've in other countries done really well with, and then for example I did it in Denmark and it was just a zombie audience. They're just like,
Wow.
and
That's the
that's,
Danish audience. I
god
know. I'm
damn it,
sorry,
just,
Steen.
and that's rough then, because and then part of it is I don't know, I don't know if it's arrogance in the fact that you've done it several times. You feel like, yeah, I'm gonna nail this, and then when you don't, it feels horrible, but it's also a little bit of a wake up call. Like, okay, so yeah. But then I've also found out, I've done when I have an experience like that, like I go through all the different stages of grief, denial and all that stuff, and then I end up learning from it. And I have been able to go back to some of those conferences and then, deliver a great talk, be highest rated, and really get a great reaction, which is very satisfying then. But
Yeah.
then that's because I've then understood that audience and so on. So one of the things I've noticed, for example, is that if you're speaking, this is just a generalization, but if you're speaking to, for example, a very specific e-commerce audience, I found that it's very, very helpful to make it very practical.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the talks I do are maybe more kind of, there's a lot of useful stuff in there, also a lot of entertainment, but I try maybe to address like a bigger issue that maybe like high level will challenge a little bit how you think about stuff, and then there's also some practical things. But I've just noticed that at e-commerce conferences they don't do quite as well as if I do something which is much more like bam, 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 and now you have 20 things to do when you come home. So I think that's part of it, is also kind of, and that comes with experience. I think, on really understanding who you're delivering an audience to.
So I got to ask you, you've been talking, you've seen so many speakers through your
Mhm.
speaker training and in conferences. I got to ask you, what's the last time you saw a speaker or you taught a speaker and they really blew you away with something that they did, like some amazing antique on the stage or some trick or some tactic that really kind of floored you as an expert that I have to do that myself. Like I have to get that into my repertoire as well.
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I mean, I'm also jaded at this point. It takes it takes quite a bit to impress me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think I'm coming up short now with concrete examples, to be honest. But
I've
I
got a
think,
super.
but but
Yeah.
you know, but just but I think that some of the things that impressed me is especially when people are well. I think it's when you see a unique speaker, a person
Yeah.
who's really themselves, and especially if they're funny.
Yeah.
You know, and because if especially people who have like their especially people who have a sense of humor that only works for them. If you so for example, I think Andre Morris is a great example. Like I would if I did any of what he did, it would be embarrassing and not funny. But his comedic timing and a little bit of the German accent and this and that just makes it so elegant and funny. And that
Yeah.
I think that's always one of the things that impresses me is stuff like that. But then also you know, things like having um, a nice storyline, you know, a talk that makes
Yeah.
sense and so on. And then also if you can make it entertaining and give me something concrete, and we're like, wow, yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool. That those are some of the things that I normally look for. And
So I have one. I have one example which doesn't translate to a lesson in any way. It's not reproducible. But there was a speaker who was at a Finnish conference who was kind of, let's put it like, he was kind of diminutive looking, like a just an totally kind of in shambles, and
Mhm.
everyone was kind of wondering what's going to happen, and he comes on stage he's introduced, and there was applause. And when the applause died down, he just kept quiet, like for a good 5, 6, 7 seconds. He was just staring at the audience. Then he was like, "So, how are you?" Like he instantly, like 0 to 100. Everybody like jumped in their
Yeah,
seats,
yeah.
and I thought that was absolutely brilliant because he disarmed everybody
Yeah.
completely from their preconceived notions of what he's going to be like. And he was then, of course, very energetic as well. But he had that pause that was just too long that it went into awkward stage, and then he broke through that. I would never do that myself. One thing I've been trying to practice is to have a little pause when I enter stage. So I don't kind of like, I don't walk on stage and say, "Hey, I'm Simo." I
Yeah,
come
yeah,
on
yeah.
stage, I
Yes.
stand by the podium, I take a breath,
Yeah.
and then I
Yes.
start, which is just a good practice. But he took it way beyond that. Like he took it to the awkward place, and it worked really, really well. Like it disarmed the audience instantly, and everybody was laughing with him. And so that was that kind of caught on me because I wondered, like, is he going to try to
Yeah.
push it to like 20 seconds, 25, 30? At what point will people think that he's maybe comatose? And it was
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
it was
totally.
such a wonderful
But
example.
I think humor is just is fantastic for talks. I mean, and even if you have a serious topic and you know whatever you're doing, I think it just if you can inject humor in a natural
Yeah.
way that works, it's just such a relief and it's just such a way of giving people a great experience and bonding with the audience and so on. And like the ultimate thing is if like the example you gave here, if you can get people to laugh in your intro, like within the first 30 seconds of being staged, you're just like, it just sets you up so well
Yeah.
because people get excited and they're like, wow, this is going to be good. You get the energy levels up, the attention and so on. But then the trick is, I think part of it is also then in the intro, you're kind of in a way, well, it's the first impression. You're kind of making, in a way, a promise about the rest of the talk. So for the rest of the talk, you kind of have to stay true to who you were in the intro. So if you were like hilarious in the intro, and then the
You
rest
have
of the
to
Yeah,
talk
keep
is
it.
just,
Yeah.
yeah.
then has a tendency to backfire, right? So it's yeah,
The
but no, humor I think is so important.
the humor also is tricky because one time I was speaking at How to Web here in Bucharest, and it was a
Hmm.
big stage, and you would the MC presented me, and then you have to go to this smoke thing to come behind the stage.
Oh, really?
I This was the first time when I was like all set up to go on stage. I was like, TEDx,
Uh,
and I didn't realize my microphone is on,
oh no!
and it was like, oh shit, I don't see. Everyone heard that. I was like, I'm okay, but everyone was
That's really
dying
good.
laughing, like
Oh, that's
people came
perfect.
from, because it was like it was a shit hour also. It's like it was close to lunchtime, So people hearing a crazy person said, "Oh shit," and then I was like, "Oh, I'm okay, don't worry." People came and like they actually stayed at my talk, and I was like destroyed mentally. I was like, "Oh, I fucked up." But then I was like, "So, let's." I didn't present myself. I just went in, with some jokes, and then people afterwards said, "Oh my god, I thought that was so funny. Was it a trick?" I was like, "No, I was about to fucking fall. I couldn't see shit. There was smoke everywhere."
That's
So,
perfect. It's perfect.
but I died inside when I realized people were hearing me, because a friend of mine was in the first row and looked at me like this. I was like, "That's not the face I'm trying to see," because I told her to stay there so I
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah,
look
yeah.
at her, so I can build up on this.
Of course.
And yeah, that was a Valentin. Also, Valentin Radu did something cool. Like, that was a trick. It was at an e-commerce conference, and he was trying to tell people that e-commerce CEOs are doing things wrong. So he said, "This is how e-commerce CEOs do things." So he takes off his shoes, his socks. He puts his shoe on his bare foot, and then he puts his sock on top of the shoe.
Nice. Nice.
And
Oh,
then he
that's
said,
good.
"This is exactly how you guys are approaching this." And
Nice.
everyone was like,
Nice.
"Yeah, yeah,
That's good.
that's."
But
I wouldn't do that though. I don't like to show my toes. I have what shoes. That's where it ends.
but what you're mentioning there is a great point, because spontaneous humor that just occurs is some of the best stuff. I mean, so one of the things, like I said, I always have a very specific intro that I know very well, but I kind of always hoping that something weird will happen that I can use before.
Yeah,
Even like whatever it could be. Like last time I spoke at GPEC, in the morning, I was totally focused on my presentation. It was a new one. I was like, "Rah, rah, rah," like you remember me, Simo, and at the hotel, like, and then I had this, this thing where I forgot, like I was on the wrong floor, and I was still kind of talking to myself, doing my intro or whatever, and I had my key card and I couldn't open the door, and like I started like pulling the door and getting really noisy, and then all of a sudden, I realized, God, I'm like on the wrong floor, and then at that second, I heard someone at the door about to open it, and then I just panicked, right? So I ran towards the elevator,
As
and,
one
and,
does.
and then like completely irrational, I should have just been like, "Oh, I'm sorry," because this person must have thought, "What the fuck," right? But then when I was at the elevator, I was like, "Should I run back and try to explain?" But that would be really weird if I come back
That
and
would be
knock
just
on the
make it so
door,
much worse.
yeah, and say like, "The person before that was me," right? It was just
Yeah.
like, so I used that on stage, and
Yeah.
if I tried to tell that now on stage, it wouldn't be funny, but it was funny then because I still had that. It was fresh in my memory, and I could kind of, and also, I guess in a way, it was a tactic just to be like personal and kind of make fun of myself before I started like the talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you fall on the stage on the way up or something is actually excellent, because then you can really,
But about that, do you, like when you train speakers, or when you think about this yourself, do you have like recovery tactics? Like, do you have something in plan when slides don't work, when your microphone goes off, when you
Yeah.
trip?
Yeah, I mean, well, if we start with the humor, for example, one of the really important things is you're not a stand-up comedian. Well, I guess unless you are, but most of us aren't. Like, we can be funny, but we're not. It's not stand-up, right? So it has to be a solid talk without the humor. And also, if like audiences are different, so if people don't like the joke, then you have to just be able to continue as if it wasn't meant to be funny, really.
Yeah.
Because I think some of the most embarrassing situations I've seen on stage is, I've seen it a couple of times, where people, they deliver the joke and they pause,
Oh man, waiting for applause.
and it's just crickets.
Yeah.
And then they're like, aga,
Awkward.
and then they try to keep going, and that just kind of reinforces it, and that just makes the audience dislike them more, because they're like, that was not funny,
And the speaker gets visibly shaken. And
so
Yeah.
you have to be able to just continue, like deliver the joke, and if they laugh, then you can pause, but if don't pause to get the laughter and so on. So you have to be able to just smoothly move through it without. And then I think, I mean, if something goes wrong, I think the main thing is just taking it easy, right? If you can, then somehow make it funny, that's great. But kind of just take it easy and try not to react too much to it. Because if you start going like, get really worked up about it, then the audience has a tendency. I mean, if you're taking it easy and you're like, someone, well, whatever, then I think you get the sympathy of the audience, because they're like, oh, that's a shitty situation. But if you're up there on stage getting angry or frustrated or something like that, then they have a tendency to be like, that's not, it's not a good personality trait, I think. So yeah, I that's the main stuff. Like, and then I mean, yeah, I mean, if there's an opportunity to kind of make fun of it or something, that's the best thing. I mean, I remember I had this really weird situation at a conference where I did my intro, I was getting into my intro story and stuff, and then suddenly someone walked on stage and tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, what? Like one of the crew. And they're like, they can't hear you because she thought my mic was broken. And the audience
Oh
was going,
no.
we can hear him fine. She's like,
Oh
no, 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 no,
wow.
no. I was like, what? And then they gave me a mic, right? So all of a sudden I was standing there with a mic also and a clicker and a headset and stuff. But anyways, that situation I just kind of rolled with, and I was like, okay, well now you can definitely hear me or
Yeah,
something like
wow.
that.
That's pretty good.
And
Good
then they
recovery.
were like, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough when stuff like that happens. I
So how
think.
can people reach out to you and get coached? Like, do you have a website
Mhm.
where? Because I don't want to wrap the episode up without giving the people a chance. Because I think I might be interested. Because I do feel like uh I relate to you a lot.
Mhm.
Because I also sometimes I am at 150%, and Simo saw that my 150% sometimes, and it's pretty intense, and I can be pretty intense as a person. For instance, when I was telling you in the beginning,
Mhm.
I spoke at a conference in Greece with Talia and everyone,
Mhm.
but John and I was crazy as I am, but John Ekman liked me, and John Ekman is like the most calm
Yeah, 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 yeah.
person you ever meet. And he said, "I want you to come and speak at Conversion Jam." So I was like so fucking excited. I died. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh,
I was
awesome.
like, "Sure, that would be nice." Inside, I was like, "Yes, yes." So
Nice.
like I do think I need to control that,
Mhm.
because it's you're right, like people might just expect you to be funny, and you could have like a really good talk, but they only keep in mind your energy, so they're thinking, I never thought about that before, so you
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
think. I mean,
yeah,
it's a balance because it's of course very important to be yourself and be true to yourself,
but
but
also,
also be a little bit self conscious about it, and then also just being aware that the way I like to think about it, anyways, is I'm there to deliver, well, essentially a performance also for the audience, right?
yeah,
And so I have to. They're the customers, right? They're the audience. So I have to. It's not. I mean, I don't see it as art, where it's like take it or leave it. This is me, kind of thing. It's like no, I have some work to do as far as actually giving them a good experience. And
absolutely,
also, if I'm getting paid good money to be there,
that's
like
true.
I actually am there to do a job. So I have to deliver. So I think that's part of it. Is just figuring out how you can adapt a little bit to the audience and so on, and then about speaker coaching. I mean,
Yeah, tell us how we
just
can do, how
well,
can
just
we get this?
right. Well, I'm planning to do a course and a cohort and all kinds of stuff. But right now, the easiest thing is LinkedIn,
Okay.
because my website is under construction still. Um, but the one thing I'd say, well, one of the things about speaker coaching is it's I think some people see it kind of as almost like a weakness, especially experienced speakers, and it's
Hmm.
almost like a failure getting some help, which to me is a bit odd because I compare it to like being an athlete. It would be unheard of if like a top athlete said, "I don't need a coach," right? You'll be like, "What? That's insane."
Yeah,
So I think everybody could do with having an experienced coach helping them because it's not about being an amateur or anything. It's about performing at your highest level, right? And so whenever I do new talk, there's people I go to, for example, Ollie Gardner, who I massively respect, and I think he has such a keen eye for detail. So I'm always like really eager to get to do the presentation for him, like because he's going to give me so much to think about. Where I'm like, oh, of course, and you can do this joke like that, and so on. So I myself am very open to it. But yeah, I mean, and then just one quick pitch or whatever, or just so people understand kind of what it is. My angle, um, well, let me put it differently by putting other people down. No, I think that a lot of the speaker trainers, what are out there, I think there's a tendency that is more theatrical stuff or almost like acting class or very kind of high level, or very kind of formal or whatever the word is. Where my angle is, and that's good for some people. For the people I work with, is I want to be like very down to earth, extremely practical, and essentially it's because I've been doing this for so long and I have so much experience that it's almost nothing that I haven't tried, in the sense that anything they're going through I can empathize with. And so the practical thing, is like, you got this talk, you got to deliver, and we got to help you, right? So we're gonna work on the most important things first, and we're gonna get you ready for the talk. So I don't want to, and I'm not trying to turn anyone into a clone and a version of me. I'm trying to figure out who are they as a speaker, and then how can we build on that, and how can we make you like the best possible speaker by staying
Yeah,
true to yourself, right?
I like that because not everyone is, built to do the formal type of. I couldn't. Like I
Oh
see
no, no,
people
no,
do
no.
it and they're doing it great, but I could never, and I look at them and I'm like, wow, this is so pristine and perfect and beautiful. And then I come and I make a joke and I curse. I do curse in my talks.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
don't do it on purpose, but I get passionate and sometimes fucks will happen in the call.
Fox will fly.
Fucks will
Fox will
fly.
fly. But I think
I
that's also
love that. I'm using that.
it's a personality thing, because I think for someone like you, where it's very natural, that's different than if it feels forced. Like if you're just
I
saying,
couldn't do it. People won't believe me. If I go there and be like this, so this is a search
yeah,
query.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming,
My pleasure.
Michael.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're gonna put all your we're gonna put your LinkedIn, but also if you wanna share some talks that you have on
Sure.
YouTube,
Yep.
I
Yeah,
would love to
good
watch
idea.
them for myself,
Okay.
but also for other people.
Sure.
And I think that would be good for people to see you in action, and then to reach out and talk to you. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to
Absolute
us.
pleasure. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
inviting me,
Michael.
guys.